Hamas leader Ismail Haniyeh has been killed in Tehran in an Israeli raid on his residence. What we know so far is that Haniyeh was killed by an airborne guided projectile that hit a special residence for military veterans where he was staying north of Tehran. It was around 2 a.m. local time when Haniyeh was possibly asleep. The attack happened soon after the Hamas leader attended the swearing-in ceremony of the country's new president, Masoud Pezeshkian. Now, yesterday, Israel said its strike in Beirut killed Hezbollah's senior-most military commander, Fouad Shukur, who it blamed for a rocket attack in the Golan that killed 12 children. Israel has assassinated more people than any Western state has since the Second World War. It's believed to have carried out over 2,700 assassination operations in over 70 years since the formation of the State of Israel. To talk about why Israel assassinates its enemies over 70 years, I have with me General VK Datta, an Israeli-trained Special Forces officer who's also been in the NSG, Yeshaya Rosenman, freelance journalist at the Jerusalem Post, who joins us from Jerusalem, and in the studio I have with me my colleague Aditya Raj Kaul. Gentlemen, welcome to the News9 Plus show. Aditya, I want to start by asking you this. The timing of the attack, the place where he was attacked, in the middle of Iran, in the heart of Tehran, a few kilometers away from the capital, just after the inauguration of the Iranian president. Timing, location, and the undeniable fingerprints of an Israeli assassination. Tell us what we know so far.
Well, Sandeep, firstly, the time frame, the window that they had, you have to give it to the Israelis.
Yes.
They must have planned this to the T for months together. They knew that Ismail Haniyeh regularly has been visiting Iran to meet the supreme leader, to meet IRGC officers. And time and again, perhaps their hit squads in Tehran had been monitoring his activities. Of course, they would have been tracking him in Qatar, in Turkey and other places that he visits regularly. But this has happened. I mean, this has happened at a time when the entire world media's attention was on multiple things. One, on Hezbollah, because the northern area of Israel was heating up. There was an attack launched by Hezbollah a few days ago where 12 children had been killed. In retaliation, Israel hit Hezbollah in Beirut, killing the second in command, the strategic unit's chief of Hezbollah, clearly indicating that north is going to heat up. And the attention was also on the transition of power taking place in Iran. We had representatives from all across the globe.
Including India.
Including India, we had Nitin Gadkari, in fact, the top ministers from the Modi cabinet visiting there. And Ismail Haniyeh was representing Hamas and so-called Palestine there itself. There were visuals of him meeting the supreme leader. And inside that huge hall where world leaders were present at the inauguration. And that's when this really happens. Now, we won't call it a surprise because for months together, we have discussed, even in this studio, Sandeep, with you, immediately after the 7th October attacks. And I would say that since 7th October, this is perhaps the biggest revenge that Israel has been able to take and avenge the southern Israel terror attacks. What we also know is that things may heat up now. There will be a retaliation from Hamas, from Iran. Already senior leaders from both Hamas and Iran have spoken about a retaliation and a unity between the resistance
we'll come to that about the retaliation part, Aditya, but I want to bring in Yeshaya Rosenman on this. Yeshaya, Israel has been assassinating its adversaries since before Americans started using drone strikes and the CIA started using targeted assassination. Give us a perspective as an Israeli, as a journalist, as a researcher. Why is it that Israel needs to assassinate its adversaries? Why it's very open about killing them wherever they may be, in whatever time frame, whichever country they may be, as we've just witnessed?
Yes, so the obvious reason is that we do not wage total war against our enemies. We do not want to conquer Beirut or Damascus or Tehran, so we can't roll in columns of tanks to these countries. But to give a more concrete answer that would resonate well in Israel, there was a famous speech by the fabled Minister of Defense and General Moshe Dayan on the grave of Roy Rothenberg on the southern border in the 50s, when the Fedayeen used to come and do cross-border raids on Israeli kibbutzim in the south. This is long before Hamas existed as a movement. And in his famous speech, he said, "We cannot put a soldier on every kibbutz at 24 hours a day.
Yes.
We cannot mobilize the army everywhere. What we can do is make sure that our enemies pay such a high price for every Israeli casualty that they will think twice and three times before they ever attempt it."
Right.
So in that sense, the policy of assassinations strikes fear in the hearts of the terrorists. It makes it clear that we can and will take them out anywhere across the globe.
Right. We can and will take them out anywhere across the globe, and we all know about the Operation Wrath of God after the 1972 Munich terror attack, how Mossad literally hunted down Palestinian terrorists across the globe, especially in the heart of the Western world. But I want to bring in Major General Datta in on this. General Datta is a special military veteran. He's one of the handful of Indian Army Special Forces officers who's been trained by Israeli Special Forces. So he literally knows how the Israelis think, how they move, how they plan. General Datta, any surprises about this assassination of Ismail Haniyeh in, if you can call it that, broad daylight in Tehran, in the heart of Iran?
See, there are no surprises. I will just take you back after the 7 October attack carried out by Hamas and the statement made by Mr. Netanyahu. He had made a statement that you have done what you did. You have come and killed our civilians, women and children. You've taken our hostages. Now what Israel is going to do, your 10 generations will remember. Just mark this word, 10 generations will remember. And since then, the directions by Mr. Netanyahu were given to Mossad to target all those leaders who were involved in the planning of the 7 October attack, whether they were Hamas, whether they were wherever in the world. So once a target has been specified, resources are allocated by the authority. Those resources thereafter go day and night after that target, trying to chase, trying to track down, trying to find an opportunity to assassinate. And similarly, all these targets, whether it is Yeshaya Sinwar, who is yet to be killed within Gaza, and Ismail Haniyeh, whether it is the Hezbollah, even Nasrullah. Nasrullah has been told that it is his turn now after the killing of 12 children playing soccer in northern Israel. So now it's a question of time when these teams, which are constantly tracking these targets, will find a window. And once they find a window, they have been given the resources by the central agencies, whether they are air assets, whether they are drones, whether they are missile systems, whether they are laser designators, whatever means they can use to target and neutralize that target will be given to them. And now the way, in the manner they have done this, the IRG has yet not been able to give out how it has happened. Whether it is a strike by F-35, whether it is a drone attack, whether it is a laser-guided weapon, they are in a dark at the moment. So that is the beauty of the targeting system and the type of weapon you're going to use to neutralize the target. So it is the beginning of the show. Iran by proxy has been targeting Israel. Iran by proxy of Hamas, Hezbollah, Houthi, ISIS in Syria, in Iraq, they have been targeting Israel. So Israel, as far as Israelis are concerned, Iran is the main culprit. It is Iran who's instigating this attacks on Israel. So now by targeting this gentleman in Tehran, they've sent a message to Iran that nobody is safe. Whether the erstwhile president, though it's stated that he died in a helicopter crash, how do you know? It is a big game. There are a lot of gray areas. You cannot pinpoint till the time a person makes a claim, yes, I've done it. So similarly here, Israel has not yet claimed. It is just speculation that if this has happened, it could have possibly been done by the Israeli Mossad or by the Israelis who have a track record since the formation of Israel, that anyone who's harmed any Israeli will not be let down, will be tracked and killed anywhere in the world. Whether it happens today, tomorrow, after 5 years, after 10 years, he will not survive. So that is it. And the Israelis have proven their mettle that yes, once we are behind a target, we will get you. And the same thing they did in Beirut, Hezbollah. They struck these kids playing soccer. Within hours, this gentleman was taken down. Precision strike. So that means that nobody who's today sitting against Israel, planning attacks in Israel, he is not safe anywhere in the world.
He's not safe anywhere in the world. And thanks, General Datta, for taking us into Israel's, if you can call it that, revenge machine that the state of Israel has, set up and at great expertise over the last 70 years or so, because it's a state of survival. It's a state of, it's a security state that needs to literally survive as it fights enemies on all fronts. But Aditya, now the fact that you've assassinated a top Hamas leader in the heart of Iran, will there be a retaliation from Iran, and how will it play out?
You know, whether there will be an immediate retaliation or not, one thing is very clear, that the war is not over.
Right.
This is a long war. This is going to continue. Another thing that is very amply clear is that whatever a few hostages remain, and the hostage deal that was being discussed has immediately broken down.
That's off the table now.
It's off the table.
Right.
Because Iran has also come out with a statement, and we have a latest statement from Qatar as well, saying that if you actually kill the lead negotiator from one side, then how do you expect negotiations to really take place?
Right.
This is the matter of negotiation. But I think Israel was very much clear from the very beginning that we will hunt down the top leaders of Hamas and Hezbollah. We will go after them not just in Gaza, but anywhere apart from that, in Qatar or anywhere in the world. And they have proven that. Of course, just like General Datta mentioned, there is no confirmation, there is no deniability coming
but that's
in.
the Israeli
That's a classic
MO.
Israeli model.
Right.
You know, that's how they operate.
Yes.
And the world media can speculate, but Israel has shown to the world how they have reacted and how revenge is actually taken. But there has been a statement that has come out from the United States as well, that whether there is escalation, whether there is a regional conflict that brews now, there will be support from the United States for Israel, and Israel will have the right to defend itself.
Absolutely.
I am pretty much sure that the Israeli IDF, the military commands, would have taken this into consideration, that there could be a two-pronged or a three-pronged attack from multiple proxies of Iran from different sides.
As retaliation.
Hezbollah has already said through journalists in Beirut that there will not be a direct retaliation, but there will be a retaliation on the economic lines. That could mean either Hezbollah attacks some of the shipping routes through Houthis, or there could be
as
some other trade.
Doing,
that's what we've witnessed over the last many months. So, in all, I believe that the war against Hamas will continue in Gaza. There is no stopping it now. And of course, we will expect, if not immediate, but perhaps in the next few days or weeks, a retaliation both from Iran and Hamas.
Retaliation from both Iran and Hamas. But Yeshaya Rosenman, this question, point that raised by Aditya, the fact that this actually leads to a hardening of the stance. And at a time when, both sides were looking at resolving the conflict, possibly talking of a ceasefire, a return of hostages, the killing of the lead negotiator now means that all of this is off the table and possibly the hostilities could resume. What's your take on this?
I personally am of the opinion that there never was any realistic chance for the hostage deal, because if you followed Hamas's statements on what they were demanding an Israeli capitulation, that Israel would in essence allow Hamas to remain in power, allow it to slowly but surely rebuild its military capabilities, and Israel was not going to do that. So in my opinion, it was a facade to begin with. The only way to release the hostages is through military force. That is my opinion. And note that even after Israel eliminated Rafa Salami, I think his name was, and possibly Mohammed Deif was also killed in that attack, no missile attacks have ensued from Hamas because we have taken out their entire missile apparatus. Hezbollah might, I think that safe to say the consensus among Israeli commentators is that it's not a question of if war will break out with Hezbollah, it's a question of when. They have 150,000 missiles of all kinds according to a CIA report, they didn't buy those missiles just to keep them in warehouses.
Yes.
I don't know what it would look like, and of course, it would be they are a much better fighting force than Hamas, much greater armament. And the main question is Iran itself. Iran, on April 14th, Iran had already shot 300 ballistic missiles and cruise missiles and drones at Israel. I don't know what they will do this time. It's clear to me that they will retaliate.
Yes.
And the question is whether there is an appetite to go after Iran all the way to actually, I don't know what, if it's possible to topple the regime, or I don't think there is any final solution for Hezbollah other than taking out the Iranian regime, because even if we fight Hezbollah now to the last missile and the last soldier, they will rebuild as soon as it's all over, as long as the Iranian revolutionary regime remains intact.
Absolutely. And there's an expression that's attributed to Israeli security analysts, Aditya, which says mowing the grass, that you have to mow the grass every few years and remove a generation of leadership, as what the Israelis seem to be doing now with Hamas. But clearly that's not a long-term solution. But I want to ask General Datta General Datta, you've also been in the NSG, and it's all about counter-terrorist operations, saving hostages. You have 70 to 80 Israeli hostages that are still in the custody of Hamas in Gaza, possibly elsewhere. What could be the fate of these hostages now, nearly 9 months after they were kidnapped? What is Israel signaling now with this assassination of Ismail Haniyeh? The fact that the hostage negotiations are off the table now. What happens to the hostages now, the Israeli hostages in Hamas's custody?
See, it is a very unfortunate situation. To carry out a hostage rescue is a very precise operation which needs last 3-second planning.
Yes.
If you do the surprise and the enemy gets a early warning of say 3 to 10 seconds, he will then be able to either kill the hostages or blast them out or whatever. So therefore, hostage rescue operations are one of the most difficult operations. You have to know where the target is, what is the type of building, how many entries are there, what is the neighborhood like, and how are you going to achieve surprise to rescue them. If you are, you must be aware that few days back, I think just about a month and a half back, in Rafah, special rescue operation was carried out by the Israeli special forces in the broad daylight, and they were able to take out 4 or 5 hostages. Now, as far as the balance of them are concerned, where are they been hidden, whether they are in the tunnels, whether they've been kept in the residential areas, it's a big question mark. And the fate of the hostages, they definitely must have been under tremendous mental trauma. They must have been harassed, tortured, even some statements saying raped every day. So the question is that 72 hostages, whether we are able to actually rescue them or not, or maybe they become ultimate sacrifice in this entire war against Hamas. Either way, Hamas will not be left. Hamas will be finished till the end. Israel is not going to stop till the time they are able to neutralize every fighter of Hamas in Gaza. There is going to be no ceasefire. Whatever pressure you may put on Israel, it has got no meaning. If you have now led to 40,000 odd deaths in Gaza, 40,000 approximately today. Right. So what has the Gazan or the Palestinians achieved? What have they achieved by taking these hostages? What have they done to Gaza? Gaza was a very peaceful area before this. Fine. So it is a big question mark now.
Absolutely. It's a big question mark, and what we know for now, Yeshaya Rosenman, is the fact that there are no negotiations now. Israel seems to be signaling the fact that it does not want any more negotiations, and it will not rest till all of Hamas is taken out. But give us a sense of where the conflict with Hamas is now headed with this very sensational attack, this assassination of Ismail Haniyeh. What's the future of this conflict? Resolution or annihilation?
As to Hamas, I don't think there is any situation in which Israel will allow them to remain in power in Gaza afterwards.
Right.
Hamas leadership had already said that they wanted to the international press, they're not ashamed of this.
Yes.
They said that they want to do October 7th again and again. So Israel has made it clear that we can't allow this and we will topple the Hamas regime. Personally, I don't think there is significant thought of yet. There's not a significant understanding what will be in the day after in Gaza. Just to point out that the entire population, the vast majority of the population in Gaza has been thoroughly radicalized by the Hamas regime, by the media, by the education system, and a parallel to the denazification of Germany and Japan would take years. It took the Allies years. They remained in Germany and in Japan with complete control of the media and education system. And I don't think there is yet, the Israeli government has come to a conclusion on how that would take place and how what a successful de-radicalization would entail.
Right.
The question would be now, and again, Hamas, we're taking out more and more of their senior leadership, and there is no stronger response from Hamas because we have them cornered. The battle has more or less come to a standstill now, probably until after the U.S. elections, and then we'll see, how Israel finishes it off. The main question now is with Hezbollah, which has a tremendous amount of firepower, and it hasn't been quiet on the northern border. Initially there were around, I believe, 70,000 Israelis evacuated from the towns and villages across the northern border. There are still around 17,000, I believe, still evacuated from their homes. Over hundreds of homes, I think over 800, around 700 or 800 homes have been destroyed. Tremendous areas of forests have been burned. So it's not quiet on the northern border, but an all-out war, a ground invasion of Lebanon has not yet ensued, and it's unclear there as well what will be the final result. Will Israel have to reoccupy southern Lebanon as it had in the 80s and 90s? So that is unclear. And of course, the million-dollar question is what will be with Iran. What military attempts will be taken against Iran, and what the end game of that would be.
Right, absolutely. $1 million question indeed, and that's a question that the whole world is asking and in fact watching very closely. But that's all we have time for this evening. Thank you very much for joining us, Yeshaya Rosenman, General Datta, and my colleague Aditya Raj Kaul. Nearly 200 people have been killed in landslides between Monday and Tuesday in Kerala. Extremely heavy rain, fragile ecology, a steady rise in population. These are the reasons given by experts for the biggest landslide-related disasters in Kerala until now. Now, nearly 17,000 square kilometers of land in Kerala, most of it on the western side of the Western Ghats, is being mapped as landslide prone. The IMD had predicted rain and landslides could happen, so why has the government not been able to put in place a good relief plan? To talk about this, I have with me Sridhar Ramakrishnan, environmental, climate policy observer from Kerala, Dr. Roxy Mathew Kaul, environmentalist, and in my studio, my colleague Nivriti Mohan. But before I go on to my guests, let me ask Nivriti. Nivriti, eastern Kerala is a hilly terrain with steep slopes. It's susceptible to landslides. There have been major landslides in 2019 and 2020. Can you tell our viewers what really happened in Wayanad on Monday and Tuesday?
Right, so we have a graphics made out here in which we will try to show you how it happened. So this is the graphic, and you can see the Sahyadri mountain range over here.
Yes.
And you can see the mountains, you can see the origin of the Iruvarani river.
Right.
And it is flowing down, and here somewhere the landslide happens, and this is Muddakai village.
Right.
So in this village, the horrific tragedy that happened, it swept away all the houses
that we now see.
Everything that came in the way of the river and the landslide, it came down and flowing down, it reached up to this place called Chural Mala village.
Right.
Now in this village also around 200 houses were swept away.
Right.
Bodies came flowing down the river, and here you can see through this waterfall, Suchipara waterfalls, the bodies came down, and from here the bodies floated and reached up to 90 kilometers away to this place here.
Right.
And you can imagine how horrific the tragedy was, because the bodies came down floating up to 9 kilometers from where they actually landslides
in the river
happened.
And the river is in spate.
Yeah. So this is how it happened, and it resulted in a horrific tragedy over here.
Right. Thanks, Nivriti. So I want to start by asking our experts this. Dr. Ramakrishnan, Kerala has been seeing very extreme weather-related events since 2017. You, of course, had Cyclone Oki a few years back, and then those very heavy rainfall of 2018, where over 400 people were killed. Why is this happening in Kerala particularly? Is this ground zero in global warming, in climate change that we are seeing now in the last couple of days?
Look at it from a technical point of view, from what it looks like. Kerala, I must first of all say that is now marked probably as an extremely vulnerable state as far as climate change is concerned.
Right.
And we don't have an escape from it. The symptoms of it explicitly, it has always been there for at least the last couple of a decade or so, but the symptoms of it came explicitly off by 2017 when we got the Oki, and then 2018 when we had the floods, and then consecutive years we have had something or the other. Small floods, big floods, landslides, cyclones we don't expect, cyclonic formations in the Arabian Sea which we wouldn't otherwise expect. And all this are symptoms that we are probably walking into a state where we can very clearly say that this could be a climate change impacted region. Now, having said that, I also want to say that while this is the current situation, in 2018 we had the floods, and the floods should have been a major lesson for us.
Right.
Unfortunately, after that, we had the Kerala, the resilience building exercise, Resilient Kerala. But in the Resilient Kerala process, right now, when after the 2024, this landslide is seen, we have also sort of realized that the risk assessment systems, the risk mitigation processes, and the preparedness, including a proper early warning system, seems to be completely missing. Now, we are, if we can expect, see, in Kerala, the statistics go that about 14.5% of the Kerala's landscape is landslide prone. Now, if that is so, and then from 2000, the numbers show that from 2016 to 2016, 1961 to 2016, we have at least 295 people die of landslides. In 2001, we had a huge one in the south of Kerala. 2019, we had 2 of them in the north of Kerala. So there has been, and there have been smaller and bigger hundreds of such landslides in this particular Western Ghats region, which means that we should have really prepared ourselves. Our risk spaces, the zones that we have risk in are actually identified, or at least the governments claim that they have been identified. If so, then we should have taken action there in multiple levels of action. One, in high-risk prone areas, we should not have let people settle down, more of them settle down, and those who have already settled down, we should have slowly and steadily moved them out of it. 2, we should not have allowed large industrial processes like tourism, because in this region you will see that tourism is big-time growth. And Mepadi, the particular panchayat, is actually having a number of tourism, resorts and homestays and all that. Many illegal, many of them even illegal, without panchayat, approvals. So all this should have been totally avoided. And thirdly, if the early warning system had worked properly, we could have moved people out of that place, and at least life would have been saved. Because we may not be able to, at the end of the day, stop a landslide or stop the massive downpour of water, of the rain, which is in fact the main cause of it. But then we may not have been able to stop these two, but we would have stopped at least people from
Absolutely. Dying. It was an entirely avoidable tragedy, and thanks, Mr. Radhakrishnan, for putting that into perspective. But I want to bring in Dr. Roxy Mathew on this. The point that Mr. Radhakrishnan made about this being an avoidable tragedy, there have been at least 2 government-appointed committees about 11 years back that have recommended that this entire area be declared an ecologically sensitive area, or ESA. What has kept this from being declared an ESA? Given the fact that every year since 2015 at least, you've been seeing some climate-related disaster or the other. Either it's heavy rainfall or it's landslides. But till today, 2024, we still don't see any of these measures being implemented. What was suggested way back in 2013, more than 11 years ago. Dr. Roxy.
Well, thank you for this discussion. I'm actually kind of shocked by the events that are being unfolded, the number of lives being lost, and so on. And this is not just a story of Kerala, and this is not a story for today. All the hilly regions across the country, including Western Ghats from Kerala to Maharashtra, the Himalayas and the Northeast, we see extreme rains, landslides, and then deaths happening. Lives are lost. Yeah. Now, it is too early to understand the specifics of the Kerala-Wayanad landslide per se, but Radhakrishnan also added quite a number of details. So I can kind of give much more specifics from a climate scientist point of view. What we know in general is that monsoon patterns have become increasingly erratic, and I myself have looked at the data for the last century or so, because IMD has a long-term data, and from 1950 onwards, this has been building up. This is not that started a decade or two ago. For the last 7 decades, the rainfall has been building up, extreme rain.
Right.
Yeah. So, and it's not just extreme rains, the quantum of rainfall that is happening, we are receiving in a short spell of time over a smaller region. So you see a season's or a month's rain in a small region, wiping out that entire land, and that's what we saw in Wayanad.
Cloudbursts. There are more cloudbursts that are taking place now in Kerala, and districts are recording 1,000% more rainfall than normal.
Yeah, and like Radhakrishnan said, most of these are landslide-prone areas.
Yes.
So with that climate change impact, of course, we should not discount the land use changes that are happening here. In combination of this, acting upon these vulnerable, slopey, areas with slope, that is resulting in these landslides. And it is a quite straightforward decision to make. You can easily identify landslide-prone areas. It's already mapped at high resolution, granular. Yeah, and panchayats with these hazardous areas can be totally identified and sensitized. That is something that we should do. But what is happening is that, and this I saw myself in many reports, many times in the name of tourism, in the name of real estate, mining, and so on, these details, finer details of landslide-prone areas are not properly communicated or disseminated to the public. Yeah, so that is one reason that we have to work on. And if we know these regions, the next thing to do is to monitor the rainfall data in these hotspots. We do not have adequate rainfall data at most of these remote regions. Yeah. So if you look at the map that was provided by IMD and the Kerala State Disaster Management Agency, they are totally different because they are monitoring different stations. There is no convergence between these agencies. That's what I see from this. So we need to monitor them, and if we monitor, we can prepare the early warning systems that we are talking about here. Right. Yeah. It's a straightforward thing to
absolutely. It's QED, Dr. Mathew, as you mentioned. But Mr. Radhakrishnan, the fact that there have been so many government reports that have outlined this way back in 2013, and you have a series of disasters, so many innocent lives lost. Do you think that, commercial interests are coming in the way of implementing ESAs or even all of these, mitigation efforts that Dr. Mathew was suggesting? What is it that's keeping the government from acting on all of these? Like he mentioned, that if you have all of the panchayats mapped in granular detail, surely it should be an easy thing to move out people from these affected places where the next cloudburst could come.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. See, when we talk about governments, in 2011 we had a government, at least one minister there, the Environment Minister Jairam Ramesh, who probably understood the whole need to look at Western Ghats in a little more sensitive way, and he put in the Western Ghats Ecology Expert Panel, and they came up with a report. This was led by Dr. Madhav Gadgil, and they came up with a report. Now, this report actually, talks about ecologically sensitive zones that need to be protected, and they've even demarcated sensitive zones 1 and 2 and 3 and all that. And then in 1, what you do, 2, what you do, 3, what you do. But these are broad guidelines. And then the suggestion that he put forward was that the panchayats, the local self-governments, should take these guidelines up and then draft their own conservation methods there and their own processes. Now, if this had been implemented in its proper sense, we would have had a protective, a conservation process whereby such disasters could at least have been avoided in some places, and if not, at least a proper risk assessments and risk mitigation systems would have been done. But what happened is that this particular report got literally, and I would like to use the word trashed by both the politicians and the commercial interests. Now, then they bought in the next Kasturirangan report to dilute this report. Yes. And then they bought in Kerala, they bought in the Women v. Women report, which further diluted it so much that today there has been no ecologically zones under this particular process that has been notified. Now, imagine we are sitting in an extremely fragile place and we have completely trashed the report. Now, I must also, with a lot of pain, must also say that the assembly, the Kerala assembly of that time, came together and passed a resolution against this report. Imagine that.
Right.
I think we are facing the brunt, the negatives of such an act by a state. Responsible politicians, at least today, if the politicians can stand up and become a little more responsible, not just for the society, but ecologically responsible, then probably we can salvage this report and see whether there is something that can be done out of it.
Absolutely.
Following that, whatever Roxy said, the early warning systems, the ecologically sensitive planning processes, a community, involvement and training for them, a climate resilience strategy, lots of research and data which probably need to come into it, all can be done. And Kerala is one place where this can actually be done because there is a large number of people who are ecologically conscious. Right. They are worried about the environment, but unfortunately, the vested interests, whether it be the tourism industry or interest like, the same place, you wouldn't believe this, in the same place, very same place, Mepadi and this Vellarimala Hills region, they are planning, and it's already approved, they are planning a tunnel road through the very same mountains. Right. No sensible person, with some idea about these hills would even plan it. But in Kerala, we are actually going ahead with such a project.
Absolutely horrifying. The prospect of driving tunnels through such ecologically sensitive regions, that should inspire dread. But closing comments, Dr. Roxy, is it too late now for Kerala to do anything about this report? These series of reports that Mr. Radhakrishnan mentioned have been diluted over the years to the point that they have been completely trashed. What can Kerala do now? Learn from these horrific fatalities that we've just seen in the last couple of days. What needs to be done right now?
I agree with Radhakrishnan on that political will. Without that political will, there is no going forward because, like he said, there's a lot of awareness. There's a huge ecologically aware and technically capable population in Kerala. And we know for sure that these rainfall events are going to intensify, landslides are going to intensify. So but we need to save lives as well. And we cannot wait for knee-jerk reactions like, okay, you have an early warning system or forecast, so we immediately evacuate people. That may not work all the time. So we need to really identify those hotspots and make provisions to protect the lives of people. And this is something that can be done. This is already mapped, and that's the way forward. And we need the political will.
Absolutely. We need the political will. I think Dr. Matthews hit the nail on the head there, Nivriti, by saying that everything is available. You have the reports, you have the technology, you have the experts, and you have possibly one of India's most environmentally aware population. But when you don't have political will, all of this is nullified. But thank you very much, Dr. Roxy Mathew, Mr. Radhakrishnan, and my colleague Nivriti Mohan for joining us on Wayanad, an avoidable catastrophe. It's an avoidable catastrophe. It should never have happened in the first place if the warnings had been heeded.